to the President of the Treasury Board. There were some astonishing details in yesterday's Auditor General's report. 9 companies billed ratepayers $260 million in ineligible expenses. Only $160 million was recovered. Ratepayers are still on the hook for an astonishing $80 million. That's unacceptable. The money must be returned to the Treasury Board President with a Liberals' guarantee every cent is repaid by the end of the year, by December 31st.
Thank you. President of the Treasury Board.
Minister of Economic Development and Growth.
Minister of Economic Development and Growth.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Happy to respond again to this issue. And the fact is, Mr. Speaker, the IESO caught on to what looked like some form of exploitation happening to their program. They did some in-depth work over a number of years, Mr. Speaker. They've recovered, I believe it's 2/3 in total of the dollars that they deemed to be ineligible. Many of these ineligible costs were in dispute with the companies, Mr. Speaker, so it wasn't a case where the companies agreed that all of these costs were ineligible. So there was a negotiation that took place, and, Mr. Speaker, the IESO had, I believe it's $168 million that was repaid back because that's the amount they thought appropriate given the discussions they had with the companies.
We're working on warnings. Supplementary.
Thanks, Speaker. The IESO didn't catch on. They got caught. What were these companies using ratepayer money for? Wealthy executives and Liberal insiders were expensing raccoon traps and scuba gear. Mr. Speaker, only this Liberal government would let wealthy executives expense raccoon traps while ratepayers are afraid to open their bills. When will the money be paid back? By December 31st.
Thank you. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I said, the money has been reimbursed, Mr. Speaker. There was some dollars that were in dispute. There was ineligible costs that were identified. The IESO did what they ought to do, Mr. Speaker. They investigated. One of the companies was fined $10 million, Mr. Speaker. They take this seriously. There is no excuse, Mr. Speaker, for any company to try to exploit any system that's in place. But I do say, Mr. Speaker, and I say this sincerely, when a company has the ability to exploit a system, issues with the system, and that's why the IESO has also strengthened the system, in particular the definition of what costs are, Mr. Speaker, that this can.
Thank you.
4 ministers and it's still ongoing, and $80 million. I've seen a lot at Queen's Park. Billions wasted here, billions wasted there, but yesterday was different. Yesterday was something else. The auditor revealed while seniors saw their power disconnected in the dead of winter, wealthy executives were expensing thousands of dollars worth of luxuries. I am not sure which was worse, if it was the car washes, the raccoon traps, the landscaping, the coveralls, the overalls, the parkas, or scuba gear, all expensed by wealthy executives and Liberal insiders out of the wallets of ratepayers. Mr. Speaker, the egregious abuse of taxpayer dollars is astonishing. How long was the Liberal government going to go to allow their insider friends to expense gear like scuba gear and raccoon traps? Answer me that.
Be seated, please. Be seated, please. Minister.
The so-called Liberal insiders that the member's referring to has donated to that party well over $100,000, Mr. Speaker. So if anything, they're PC insiders. So maybe we should be more concerned, Mr. Speaker, because they certainly are more PC insiders than they are Liberal insiders. There is, Mr. Speaker. If the member wants to politicize this, so be it. I'll go there too. That party knows a thing or two about gaming, Mr. Speaker. They know a thing or two about exploiting. When you look at their tabloid document that looks more like a Teen Beat magazine than it does a platform, Mr. Speaker, you see on the front of that document a claim that they're cutting income tax by 22.7%. Mr. Speaker, they're doing none of the bogus tax cut they've promised to Speaker. That's what I call.
Here. You seated.
As I or in one, somebody might have already gotten one.